Have you ever felt like the smart ones weren't born that way? That intelligence is this magical gift bestowed on some, withheld from others? You watch someone solve a problem in seconds, speak with clarity, absorb information like a sponge, and you think, they're just wired differently. But here's a truth that most people don't realize: intelligence is not a trait. It's a practice. It's not inherited. It's cultivated, not granted. Earned, not fixed. Forged one small decision at a time. We are currently giving away a free e-book, 12 Stoic lessons that will change your life. To receive your gift, simply follow the channel and leave a comment that says, "I have followed," or "I would like to receive the gift." We will reply with the download link directly below your comment. In this series, you'll discover 11 powerful lessons rooted in Stoic wisdom and backed by modern psychology that will transform the way you think about intelligence. Not as a score, but as a system. Not as IQ, but as intentional quality of thought. If you stay with me until the end, you'll learn how to make intelligence a daily ritual, something that grows stronger, clearer, and more useful every single day. But first, we need to destroy the myth. Lesson 1: Intelligence is built, not bestowed. Picture this. A child in ancient Rome wakes at dawn. No screen. No apps. Just silence. He walks into the garden where his teacher, a Stoic philosopher, is waiting. But they don't start with books. They start with breath. Because true learning doesn't begin in the mind, it begins with attention. The philosopher says, your mind is a blade, but without daily sharpening, it dulls. That child, he could be you. Because your intelligence, your clarity, your wisdom, your ability to think isn't something you lost. It's something you can rebuild. Right now. But it won't come from more reading, or more scrolling, or another productivity hack. It will come from daily discipline. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up an emperor with insight. He trained. He journaled at dawn. Reflected at night. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That is intelligence in motion. Not just thinking but doing. Not just knowing but living. You want to become more intelligent? Then you must act more intentionally. You must show up each day, even in small ways, and say, "Today, I sharpen my mind." Not in a rush. Not in a binge of books. But in humble repetition. Because that's how nature works. A tree doesn't grow in spurts. It grows in rings. Quiet. Steady. Daily. You want to think clearer? Start showing up clearer. You want to stop forgetting everything you learned? Start applying what you read, even if it's just one sentence. You want to be respected for your mind? Start respecting how you use it. Intelligence isn't flashy. It's not loud. It doesn't always speak in TED talks or wear a lab coat. Often, it whispers. It's the way you pause before reacting. It's the way you choose a good book over endless noise. It's the moment you say, "Let me think about that," instead of rushing to respond. Intelligence is self minus discipline. It's the way you treat your attention, the quality of your questions, the space between stimulus and response. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Would you be wise? Then do what wisdom requires. Think slowly. Ask deeply. Practice daily. That's where intelligence lies. Not in gift hands, but in grit. Not in memory, but in meaningful practice. So tomorrow morning, before the world gets loud, sit with this one question. What is one action I can take today to sharpen my mind? Write it down. Then do it. And remember, each act is a whetstone. Each reflection, a drop of oil. Each day, another ring in the tree of your thought. That's how you become wise. That's how you become free. The emotional core of real intelligence. We tend to think of intelligence as cold, unfeeling, detached. A sharp mind operating above emotion, pure logic. No heart. But that image? That's a myth. Real intelligence doesn't float above emotion. It begins with it. You see, the mind isn't a machine. It's not a calculator. It's a living, breathing system wired to feel before it thinks. Before you analyze, compare, or solve, you react. And if you don't understand that reaction, you'll never understand your own thoughts. That's why the Stoics, masters of rational thought, always began with emotion, not to indulge it, but to train it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Let's pause here, because this one idea holds the secret to intelligent living. Emotion isn't your enemy. It's your compass. But you must learn to read it. Imagine walking into a room, maybe a meeting, or a conversation with someone who's hurt you. Your heart beats faster. Your stomach tightens. Your thoughts blur. You feel it, don't you? That heat rising inside you. You're no longer thinking. You're surviving. But intelligence, true intelligence, is the ability to notice that moment and choose your response. That's emotional awareness. That's self-minded regulation. And that is the foundation of wisdom. Modern science agrees. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success, resilience, and leadership. But the Stoics knew this centuries ago. They practiced a kind of emotional honesty that most people today avoid. They didn't suppress emotions. They observed them. Epictetus taught his students to begin each day by watching themselves like a guard standing at the gates of the mind. He would ask, "What thoughts entered today? What stirred me emotionally? What did I do with that feeling?" This is the heart of Stoic training. Emotion is raw energy, but it's your job to shape it. Anger becomes clarity. Fear becomes preparation. Sadness becomes compassion. That transformation, that's intelligence in action. Let me tell you about Nina. Nina is a startup founder. Smart, driven, highly respected. But for years, she had one blind other temper. When pressure hit, she snapped. She didn't mean to. She just reacted. Until one day, her mentor gave her a quote. "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose." That line changed everything. Nina started practicing what she called the breath pause. Before replying to a hard email, she'd take one breath. Before responding in a tense meeting, she'd take two. Before giving feedback, she'd step outside for 60 seconds. Those tiny moments saved her team and her sanity. They also made her sharper. Because once she stopped reacting emotionally, she could finally think strategically. That's what happens when you let emotional awareness lead intelligence. You gain space. And in that space, you plant seeds of clarity, patience, strength. So how do you begin training this emotional core of intelligence? Try this morning ritual, simple but powerful. Before your day begins, ask, "What am I feeling right now?" Write it down. One word. Fear, boredom, hope, frustration. Doesn't matter. Next, ask, "Why am I feeling this? What is this emotion trying to tell me?" Then decide, what's the wise response? That's it. That's how you begin to reroute your brain. Because when you give language to emotion, it loses its grip. When you see the pattern, you loosen the loop. And when you choose the response, you build the muscle of self-command. The Stoics called this proheres, is the faculty of choice. It's what separates humans from beasts. The ability to say, "Yes, I feel this. But I will not be ruled by it. I will use it." Now here's something you need to know. You will not master this in a day. You'll forget. You'll react. You'll say things you regret. But every time you return, every time you pause, breathe, and begin again, you are sharpening your most powerful mental tool, your self-awareness. Because intelligence is not how fast you think. It's how clearly you see. And clarity begins with inner calm. So tomorrow morning, ask yourself, am I choosing my thoughts? Or am I being carried by my emotions? Then, take a breath. Take two. And remember, every moment of restraint is a moment of wisdom. Every pause is a spark. Every spark, a new beginning. Know your why, or drift in distraction. There's a quiet tragedy unfolding around us every single day. You see it in the glaze minus over eyes of someone staring at their phone, in the endless scrolling, the open tabs, the busy-work masked as productivity. They are moving, but not progressing. Thinking, but not understanding. Acting, but with no direction. Because they have no why. They know what to do. They know when it's due. They might even know how to do it. But ask them why they're doing it. Seventh. This is what the Stoics feared most: the life lived without clarity. A life of activity with no intention. A mind full of facts but empty of purpose. Marcus Aurelius warned us. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse toward are wasting their time even when hard at work. Purpose isn't a luxury. It's your compass. Without it, intelligence becomes noise. Without it, your thoughts spin but never land. Without it, you mistake distraction for depth. So what does it mean to know your why? It means asking yourself one powerful question. Why am I doing what I'm doing really? Not the surface answer. Not what sounds good, but the real reason. Is it fear? Approval? Guilt? Ego? Or is it something deeper? Love? Curiosity? Service? Truth? Because until you name your true motive, you'll keep chasing goals that leave you empty even when you achieve them. Let me tell you a story. There was a young consultant named Baron. Brilliant. Ambitious. Fast-minded track career. But constantly exhausted, frustrated, scattered. He told me, I read productivity books. I plan every hour. But I still feel lost. I asked him one question. Why you do what you do? He paused, then said, to be successful. I said, that's not a why. That's a label. So I asked again, what is success to you? He went quiet. Over the next few weeks, he began to dig, to reflect, to draw, to question. And what he found was comfort but clarity. He realized he was chasing validation, not vocation. He wanted to make his parents proud, prove something to people who didn't care, outrun the insecurity he never faced. That truth hurt, but it set him free. He didn't quit his job. He aligned it. He started mentoring, taking on work that lit him up, saying no to what drained him. And for the first time in years, he felt intelligent again. Not because he got smarter, but because he stopped drifting. This is your invitation to stop drifting. And it begins with a question. Why are you doing this today? Why are you waking up early? Why are you chasing that project? Why are you reading this? Don't move forward until you answer. Because action without intention is just motion. And motion without meaning is just exhaustion. But when you move with clarity, even a small step feels like progress. The Stoics lived by this principle. Before taking any action, they would ask, is this aligned with my values? Will this bring me closer to the person I want to be? Or is this just noise disguised as importance? They were brutal in this honesty. They believed that every action either sharpens or dulls your soul. So how do you begin? Start small. Each morning, before you touch your to-do list, ask, what matters most today, and why? Write it down. Then structure your actions around that answer, not your inbox, not someone else's urgency, your clarity. It may be just one task, one call, one page, but if it's aligned, it's intelligent. Because here's the truth. The world is full of intelligent people doing meaningless work. Full of successful people who are spiritually bankrupt. Full of action without direction. But that doesn't have to be you. You are not here to live on autopilot. You are here to choose. To ask deeper questions. To chase quieter truths. To live a life that isn't just full but true. That's the kind of intelligence the Stoics practiced. Not the kind that wins arguments. the kind that builds a life of depth. So tomorrow morning, look in the mirror and ask, why am I doing this? If you can't answer, pause. Go deeper. Get honest. Because once your why is clear, distraction fades, focus rises, and intelligence becomes your way of being, not your score. Slowness is strength, the speed of clear thought. In a world addicted to speed, slowness looks like weakness. You're expected to reply fast, think fast, decide fast, deliver faster, move quickly or fall behind. That's the modern mantra. But here's what no one tells you. Speed is the enemy of wisdom. Because when the world pushes you to go faster, you stop thinking, you start reacting. You skim instead of reading. You rush instead of reasoning. You answer before understanding. And what gets lost in the blur? Clarity, depth, discernment. The very things that make intelligence useful. The Stoics understood this long before algorithms started speeding up our brains. They believed that slowness was not laziness, it was leadership. Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire during war and plague, wrote in his journal, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed." Read that again. He was not in a hurry to defend his position. He was in a hurry to find the truth. That is what we've forgotten. Real thinking takes time. Let me show you what speed costs us. You get a message that offends you. Your first instinct? Fire back. But in that instant, are you using intelligence or just a reflex? You get a deadline moved up. Panic. Rush. Cram. But does that pressure sharpen your performance or scatter your focus? You hear someone disagree with your idea. Do you listen deeply? Or prepare your rebuttal before they finish speaking? That's the difference between quick thinking and clear thinking. Quick thinking is impressive. Clear thinking is transformative. Quick thinking wins arguments. Clear thinking prevents them. Quick thinking is clever. Clear thinking is wise. So how do you begin to slow your mind without falling behind? You start with deliberate pauses. Not hours. Just seconds. Before responding to a text, pause. Before making a decision, pause. Before judging someone, pause. In that pause, intelligence enters. You ask, what is really being said? What am I assuming? What emotion is driving me right now? What would a wiser version of me do? The Stoics called this prose attention to the present moment. It was meditation. It was mental discipline. A constant return to center. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Why? Because imagination moves fast. Reality unfolds slow. And the faster you live, the more likely you are to mistake fear for facts. But when you slow down, you see clearly. And when you see clearly, you act intelligently. Real minus world application. Try this the next time you're in a conversation. Wait one extra beat before speaking. Just one. You'll notice two things. You listen more fully. You speak more intentionally. That's the training. Or, before your next decision, grab a pen. Write down the options. List the emotions behind each one. Wait 5 minutes. Then decide. Not because you're indecisive, but because you respect the weight of your choices. Intelligent people don't move slowly because they're unsure. They move slowly because they want to be sure. There's a story about Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos. Bezos once asked Buffett, "Your investment strategy is so simple. Why don't more people copy you?" Buffett replied, "Because nobody wants to get rich slowly." Replace rich with wise. Because nobody wants to get wise slowly. But that's the only way. Now let's be clear. Slowness doesn't mean procrastination. It means presence. It means you stop letting the world set your tempo. You set it yourself. It means you honor one thing at a time, because multitasking is a myth that murders clarity. It means you understand. Speed gets attention. Slowness gets results. And while the world rushes toward the next click, the next answer, the next hit of dopamine, you're sitting quietly, thinking clearly, acting intentionally. That's not weakness. That's uncommon strength. So tomorrow, try this. Eat slowly. Walk slowly. Listen without planning your response. Wait 3 extra seconds before reacting to anything that frustrates you. Those seconds, they are the forge of discipline, the birthplace of true thought. And when slowness becomes your default, intelligence becomes your identity. So ask yourself, do I want to look smart or be wise? Because wisdom takes time. And the wisest people you'll ever meet, they never rush to speak. They never panic to perform. They move like mountains, unbothered by noise, rooted in depth, built by practice, thought into action while doing is thinking. We've been taught to think before we act. Pause. Reflect. Consider. That's wise advice until it becomes a trap. Because somewhere along the way, we started thinking instead of acting. We replaced action with analysis, movement with mental loops. And now, entire lives are lived in the echo chamber of thought with no bridge to the real world. But here's the truth. Thinking is not complete until it becomes action. The Stoics were clear about this. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." In other words, stop talking about what you believe. Start living it. Because what good is insight if it dies in your journal? What good is clarity if you never move your feet? Here's the paradox of intelligence. You don't really understand something until you try to apply it. That's when the truth reveals itself. The map isn't the territory. The plan isn't the practice. And your best ideas won't survive contact with reality unless you test them. That's why the Stoics viewed action as thinking's final form. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher minus emperor, didn't spend his life in abstract thought. He wrote in the margins of war. He made decisions that affected millions. And yet his thoughts remained some of the clearest we've ever read. Why? Because he thought through action, not in isolation from it. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Read that again. Your obstacles aren't a break in your thinking. They are your thinking tested, challenged, refined. Let's break this down. You want to learn how to lead. Books won't do it. Not alone. You need to lead a meeting. Speak your mind. Make a mistake. Feel the tension. Then reflect, adapt, return. You want to master self-minded discipline? Reading about habits is a start. But until you set your alarm early and actually get up when it rings, you don't know what you know. Because only action reveals the gap between theory and truth. You want to be emotionally intelligent? All the psychology podcasts in the world can't prepare you for the moment someone you love says something that cuts deep in. You must choose your response in real time. That's the real exam. And your grade isn't a number. It's the quality of your presence. So why do we avoid action? Because action brings risk. Risk of looking foolish. Risk of failure. Risk of realizing we're not as prepared as we thought. But the Stoics had a word for this preparation through adversity. They didn't wait to feel ready. They acted, then sharpened their thinking through reflection. You don't wait until you're confident to speak. You speak, then gain confidence from the doing. You don't wait until you're sure the business will succeed. You start building unlearn in the tension of uncertainty. This is what separates thinkers from doers. And the Stoics? They were both. Let me tell you a story. Lorenzo was a philosophy student who idolized Marcus Aurelius. He could quote meditations front to back, knew every line, every principle, but he struggled. He procrastinated. He overanalyzed. He stayed stuck in his head, paralyzed by the fear of not getting it perfect. One day, a professor asked him, "What's the most important Stoic quote?" Without missing a beat, Lorenzo said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." The professor paused. Then said gently, "Then stop quoting Marcus and go live like him." That hit. Lorenzo stopped quoting and started practicing. He began waking earlier not because it felt good, but because it trained him. He spoke up when it was hard. He wrote daily not for perfection, but for practice. And for the first time, the words he'd memorized began to mean something. Because now they were real. So how do you live this lesson? Try this. Every morning, write one idea you've recently learned or believed. Then write, what would this look like in action today? It could be, discipline is freedom. You'll say no to the easy distraction. Respond, don't react. You'll breathe before replying to that message. Focus on what you can control. We'll stop overthinking the outcome and do the next step. Then go do that thing. No drama. No hesitation. Because that's where your intelligence comes alive. In motion. In muscle. In practice. And at the end of the day, ask, did I live this idea? What did I learn by applying it? That's how you build clarity that no book can give you. That's how you become a thinking person of action and an active person of thought. Remember? You don't become wise by knowing more. You become wise by using what you know. Thought without action is an unlit candle. Action without thought is a wildfire. But when you combine them, you become fire with direction. So tomorrow, don't just think. Do. Information isn't intelligence while knowing isn't enough. We live in the most informed generation in human history. You can access centuries of knowledge in your pocket. You can read Stoic philosophy, neuroscience, behavioral economics all before breakfast. You can follow 100 thinkers, listen to podcasts at 2x speed, scroll through daily wisdom quotes. And yet something feels off. Despite all this information, we feel more scattered, more anxious, less grounded. Why? Because information is not intelligence. Information is exposure. Intelligence is integration. One fills your head. The other forms your character. The Stoics warned us about this 2,000 years ago. Seneca said, learning without reflection is a waste. Reflection without action is self-minus deception. He was against learning. He was against accumulating ideas we never embody. In today's language, he was warning us about mental hoarding. Because here's what happens. You read a great insight. You feel a hit of clarity. You nod. You highlight. Maybe even share it. But then what? Do you change how you speak? How you prioritize? How you treat the person in front of you? If not, you didn't learn anything. You just collected it. This is the modern trap. We confuse consuming information with becoming someone wiser. We collect quotes instead of questions. We binge books instead of applying a single paragraph. We become addicted to stimulation, but allergic to stillness, the very space where ideas take root. Let me show you what I mean. There's a man named Eliot, a knowledge addict. He has read 300 books in the last 5 years. Follows every big thinker. Highlights endlessly. But when you speak to him, something's missing. He talks in quotes. Listens to reply, not to understand. And when real minus life challenges hide the freezes. Overthinks. Avoids. Eliot doesn't need another book. He needs to digest what he already knows. Because wisdom isn't how much you've read. It's how deeply you've changed because of what you read. The Stoics practiced something called philosophical digestion. They would read one line and sit with it 4 days. They didn't chase novelty. They chased depth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you find anything in human life better than justice, truth, self-minus control, courage, then turn to it with all your heart. He didn't write 10 quotes. He wrote one challenge. And then he tried to live it through war, loss, betrayal, uncertainty. That's the difference between someone who knows Stoicism and someone who embodies it. So what can you do? Here's a practice called the one-line method. Each morning, read only one quote or idea. Not a chapter. Not a thread. Just one. Write it down by hand. This slows the brain. Pushes presence. Reflect. What does this reveal about me? Where in my life am I not living this? What would it look like to apply this today? Apply. In one conversation, one email, one hard moment. Review at night. Did I remember the line? Did it shape anything I did? That's how you turn knowledge into character. Not through volume, through depth of relationship with the idea. Let me be blunt. If your knowledge doesn't change how you show up, it's entertainment, not education. And if you're not applying what you learn, you're not learning. You're delaying. You don't need more podcasts. You need more integration. Because intelligence isn't measured by how much you know. It's measured by how little wisdom you waste. There's one more danger in the information age. We start to believe that because we've heard something, we've mastered it. But hearing is not learning. Understanding is not embodiment. Awareness is not transformation. That's why the Stoics repeated themselves endlessly. Because they knew truth needs friction. Friction against life, against ego, against daily discomfort. Only then does it stick. Only then does it become you. So tomorrow, don't open 5 tabs. Don't read another summary. Open one idea. Slow down. And ask yourself, if I lived this line fully today, what would change? Then go find out. Because you don't need more information. You need more application. And when you shift your focus from consuming to becoming, you stop being a student of wisdom. You become it. Learn to learn the Stoic way of growing for life. What if intelligence wasn't about how much you know, but about how deeply you keep learning? We admire those who seem naturally smart. They absorb ideas quickly, speak fluently, predict patterns, connect dots. But what separates them is not memory. It's that they've mastered the minus skill of all skills, learning how to learn. And no one understood this better than the Stoics. They knew that the most dangerous moment in any life isn't ignorance. It's the illusion that you already know enough. Seneca warned, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. Let that echo for a second. Even in his old age, he remained a student not of facts, but of himself. Because real learning doesn't stop when school ends. It begins when life starts teaching. So what does it mean to learn how to learn? It means you shift your identity from the person who knows to the person who is always becoming. It means you stop obsessing over being right and start falling in love with being refined. Because ego says, I already know this. I've heard that quote before. I don't need help. But wisdom says, what am I missing? What can I learn deeper? What blind spot haven't I noticed yet? Let me tell you about Ravi. Ravi was a gifted student, top of his class, quick thinker, praised from a young age. But after college, something changed. He stopped growing. Not because he lacked ability, but because he stopped being curious. He read to confirm his beliefs, not to challenge them. He spoke to be admired, not to learn. He got compliments for being smart, and that became his prison. Until one day, he read this quote. The man who thinks he knows everything has stopped being useful to himself. It stung, because he saw himself in those words. So he began again. Started asking more questions. Started admitting when he didn't understand. Started reading slower. Listening deeper. Taking notes not to remember but to evolve. That's when his growth returned. Because humility opened the door. The Stoics practiced daily self-inquiry, not as a ritual, but as a way of life. They didn't just study ideas. They studied their response to those ideas. Marcus Aurelius journaled not to record events, but to track how his thinking changed over time. He would ask, what idea challenged me today? Where did I fall short? What truth am I resisting? This was self-shaming. It was self-upgrading. And this mindset made him not just a philosopher, but a ruler worth remembering. Because leaders who stop learning become tyrants. And thinkers who stop learning become parrots. Only the student remains alive. So how do you learn to learn like a Stoic? Here are for daily practices. Ask better questions. Don't ask, what's the right answer? Ask, what am I not seeing yet? Challenge your certainty. When you feel sure, pause. Ask, what would it take to disprove this belief? Stay a beginner. In one area of your life, intentionally suck. Learn something from scratch. Let discomfort be your teacher. Teach what you learned. If you can't explain it, simply you haven't digested it. Share one insight a day. Not to impress, but to reinforce. These 4 acts build intellectual humility, the soil in which wisdom grows. But don't confuse humility with weakness. The most powerful minds in history were also the most curious. Einstein said, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." Seneca said, "You learn while you teach." Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This isn't about becoming a scholar. It's about becoming a student of life, of relationships, of patterns, of self. You can be 60 years old and still immature if you stop reflecting. You can be 25 and carry ancient wisdom if you stay curious. Let me give you a morning practice. Every day, write these 2 lines. What am I learning? Not just books. From people. From failure. From silence. What is life trying to teach me right now? Through discomfort. Through patterns. Through resistance. When you write those 2 questions consistently, something shifts. You stop seeing problems as punishment and start seeing them as curriculum. You stop resisting friction and start studying it. That's the Stoic way. Not controlling life, but learning from it every single day. Because here's the truth. The most intelligent people you know, they're not the ones who know the most. They're the ones who stay open. They don't cling to what they were. They keep asking who they can become. That's learning. That's freedom. That's evolution by choice, not accident. So tomorrow, wake up not with pressure but with possibility. And whisper, today, I remain a student of truth, of humility, of myself. Focus is a spiritual practice. Focus used to be a natural state. Before phones, before feeds, before constant noise, you would sit, think, work, be. Now, focus feels like a luxury. The moment you begin something meaningful, ping, vibration, notification, curiosity, distraction, and you're pulled away again. But here's what the Stoics would say if they were alive today. Distraction is not just a mental problem. It's a spiritual one. Because every time you lose your focus, you don't just lose time, you lose yourself. Let's get real. You say you want clarity, discipline, depth, growth. But if you can't focus, none of that is possible. You can't think deeply when your mind is interrupted every 2 minutes. You can't learn anything meaningful when you're skimming 5 things at once. You can't live deliberately if your attention is constantly hijacked. Seneca said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." That line was true 2,000 years ago, and it's even truer today. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Focus is not about productivity. It's about presence. It's not about getting more done. It's about being fully here. Because when you lose your focus, you lose the thread of your own awareness. And without awareness, you live on autopilot. You scroll instead of sit with discomfort. You escape instead of examine. You numb instead of notice. This isn't just inconvenient. It's dangerous. Because your life is made of attention. And whatever owns your attention owns your life. The Stoics treated focus as a moral issue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness." Read that again. Every minute. With seriousness. Focus was optional for him. It was sacred. Because he knew every moment scattered is a moment you can't get back. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah's a writer. Brilliant. Sharp. But stuck. She'd start articles, then abandon them. Open tabs. Check Twitter. Refresh inbox. Repeat. One day, she found this quote: "If you seek tranquility, do less but do it better." So she tried something radical. She blocked 3 hours every morning. No phone. No internet. No noise. Just her and the page. At first, it was torture. She reached for distractions like a smoker reaches for a cigarette. But slowly silence became natural. She wrote more in 3 hours than she used to in 3 days. But more than that, she felt whole again. Why? Because she was just focused. She was present. Focus is how your soul returns to your body. It's how you meet the world not from reaction, but from intention. When you're focused, you listen better, think deeper, speak slower, move with precision. And people feel it. Because focus has weight. It has presence. It carries truth. And in a scattered world, a focused person becomes magnetic. So how do you cultivate this? Treat focus like a spiritual discipline. Here's a daily ritual. Before you start your day, write all I need ask. Just one. Not 10. Not 3. One that matters. Block a time for it. Defend that time like it's sacred. No calls. No checking. Just you and the task. Before you begin, close your eyes and breathe. Say to yourself, I am here. This moment matters. This is my practice. Do the task fully. Slowly. Deliberately. Not rushing. Not perfect. Just present. When done, reflect. How did that feel? What pulled me away? What helped me stay? That's it. Do that for 7 days. And you'll begin to experience something rare. Mental sovereignty. The ability to choose what you pay attention to and keep it there. Why is this spiritual? Because it reconnects you with the now. With depth. With the sacredness of one thing at a time. It reminds you that your value isn't measured by how many things you touch, but how deeply you touch one thing. That's where fulfillment lies. Not in volume. In presence. Let me leave you with this. Every time you resist distraction, you're not just training your mind. You're reclaiming your freedom. Because a mind that can't focus is a mind that can't choose. And a mind that can't choose is a mind that can be used. Used by systems. By others. By the endless noise of the world. But when you train focus, you train clarity, discipline, self-minus respect, and most importantly, you remember who you are. So tomorrow, don't just start your day. Choose it. Guard the morning rituals for mental strength. How do you begin your day? Be honest. Do you wake up with yourself or with the world? Most people reach for their phone before they reach for their breath. They check texts, scan headlines, swipe through updates. And just like that, the day owns them. Before they've even stood up, their nervous system is hijacked. Before they've made a decision, they're already reacting. Before they've remembered who they are, the world has told them what to fear, what to chase, what to want. But not the Stoics. The Stoics started their mornings like sacred ground, because they understood something modern science is just confirming. How you begin determines how you think, and how you think determines how you live. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That's not poetic. That's a protocol. Because if your first thoughts are rooted in gratitude, clarity, intention, you move through the day like a centered human. But if your first thoughts are borrowed from a screen, a feed, or fear, you spend your day chasing shadows. Why is the morning so powerful? Because your brain is still soft. It's in what scientists call a hypnopalm state, the bridge between dream and alertness. Your subconscious is still listening, which means you're programmable. And whatever you feed your mind first becomes the tone of your inner dialogue for the rest of the day. It's not just spiritual, it's biological. That's why Marcus and Seneca began their days with mental rehearsal. They weren't trying to feel good. They were trying to build armor. Let me show you what happens in 2 lives. Person A wakes up, checks phone, news chaos, notifications demands, inboxes stress. Already, they're behind. Already, they're defensive. Already, they've forgotten their values. Person B wakes up, sits for 2 minutes in silence, writes a line of gratitude, reads one Stoic sentence, visualizes how they'll respond to challenge. Then they move. Same life, same challenges, different mindset, different power. So how do you build a Stoic morning ritual? Not with pressure, with presence. Here's a simple 5-step framework you can customize. Stillness to 5 min. No phone. No stimulation. Just breathe. Be with yourself before you meet the world. Reflection 5 min. Right. What matters today? What virtue will I live? Where might I be tested and how will I respond? Read one line. A line from Marcus, Seneca, Epictetus. Let us shape your mental posture. Movement 5-15 min. Stretch. Walk. Cold shower. Remind your body you lead it. Act with intention. Before checking any device, complete one small act of meaning. A note to someone. A deep breath. I focus 10-minute task. That's it. You don't need hours. You need sovereignty. Let me tell you about Malik. Corporate strategist. Father of 2. Used to hit snooze 3x. Wake up late. Rush. Stress. React. Then burnout hit. He read one quote. He who is brave is free. He realized he was free not because of work, but because of how he was beginning. So, he made one rule. No phone for the first 30 minutes. He used that time for stillness, movement, journaling. Within 3 weeks, his anxiety dropped. His temper softened. His clarity sharpened. He said, I used to manage my time. Now I protect my energy. Your morning is not a slot on your calendar. It's a mirror of your inner order. And if you don't guard it, no one will. Because the world doesn't care about your peace. But you must. Here's your challenge. For the next 5 mornings before touching your phone, sit in silence for 2 minutes. Write down one intention. Read one quote. Move your body for 5 minutes. Do one meaningful act before consuming anything. Track how you feel. Not just what you produce, but how you move. You'll notice something beautiful. Your mind begins to obey your soul. Not the other way around. The Stoics knew. You don't find clarity by running into the day. You find it by claiming your own mind before anything else gets to it. So tomorrow morning, before the scroll, before the pressure, breathe. Remember, you're not behind. You're just beginning. Think long. Act daily, the Stoic strategy for growth that lasts. Everyone wants change. Everyone wants growth. Everyone wants progress. But most people are trapped in a cycle of 2 extremes. Big vision. No follow minus through. Tiny tasks. No direction. They either talk endlessly about the future without acting, or they drown in motion without meaning. The Stoics offered a third way. Think long. Act small. Repeat daily. In other words, hold a vision for who you're becoming, but ground that vision in today's behavior. That's not motivational fluff. That's architecture. Because no cathedral is built in a day. No warrior is trained in a week. And no philosopher earns clarity without practice. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire of his time. That every morning he wrote simple reminders like, do not waste what remains of your life in speculation. Be tolerant with others, unstrict with yourself. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. Why? Because he knew greatness isn't made in speeches. It's made in moments. The small, private, disciplined moments no one sees. So, what does it mean to think long? It means you carry a quiet vision, Not one you post online. Not one that needs applause. But one that answers these three questions. Who do I want to become in 5 years? Not what title you'll have, what quality of presence. How do I want to feel when I wake up? Clear? Confident? Calm? How do I want to treat people, especially under pressure? This is your North Star. Not a fixed destination, but a constant direction. Without it, you drift. With it, you choose. And what does it mean to act daily? It means you stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop measuring your growth in massive leaps. You start honoring the smallest acts of alignment. Seneca said, "While mine is being is attained little by little, and nevertheless is no little thing itself." Think about that. A single repetition done with intention can outweigh a dozen half-minded tasks. One moment of honesty. One walk taken instead of scrolled. One email written with presence. One breath before reacting. These are the bricks. Daily. Repeated. Aligned. Over time, they become a fortress. Let me tell you about Talia. Talia was an overachiever. Vision boards. Big goals. High expectations. But she burned out repeatedly. Her problem? She lived in the future. Every day felt like a test of am I there yet? Then one coach gave her this reframe. What if you stopped chasing milestones and started keeping promises? Talia began a new practice. Every morning she asked, what is one action I can take today that's aligned with who I want to become? She didn't need to crush her to-do list. She needed to do one thing deeply with integrity. And after 90 days of that one question, she didn't just feel more accomplished. She felt clearer. Because she stopped outsourcing meaning to outcomes. She started building meaning through consistency. This is the Stoic way. They didn't believe in magical breakthroughs. They believed in deliberate days. They taught that every action you take is a vote for your character. That every small effort done willingly, with presence, is a stroke on the sculpture of yourself. That's what makes you trustworthy. Respected. Clear. Not your resume. Your rhythm. Here's a practice to bring this home. Each morning, answer these 2 lines. Today I act like a calm leader, a disciplined student, a courageous friend. My one aligned action is have the conversation. Say no to the impulse. Complete the task I avoid. Then do it no matter how small it seems. Because the real power is this. When your actions match your future self, your identity upgrades. Not by force, but by flow. Let's make it practical. You want to write a book? Forget the book. Write 200 words a day for 365 days. You want to be patient with your kids? Forget parenting books. Pause once today when you want to snap. Breathe. Respond. That's the shift. You want to be respected at work? Forget titles. Be on time. Communicate clearly. Keep your word today. Do it again tomorrow. That's Stoic growth. Silent. Steady. Strong. Because in the end, it's not your goals that shape you. It's your rituals. It's not your plans that define you. It's your patterns. And when your daily actions serve your long-term vision, you become the kind of person who doesn't chase success. You build it, brick by brick, hour by hour, mindfully, quietly, intelligently. The company you keep protecting your mental environment. You become the conversations you have. You become the voices you listen to. You become the ideas you allow to orbit your attention. If you want to grow in clarity, wisdom, and discipline, you need to start with one of the most overlooked pillars of intelligence. Your environment. Not just your desk, your schedule, or your calendar, but your mental environment. And at the center of that environment is this question. Who do you allow near your mind? The Stoics warned about this constantly. Epictetus said, the key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Notice he didn't say smart people. He didn't say rich people. He didn't say famous people. He said people who call forth your best. That means people who challenge you without humiliating you. People who remind you of your values. People who speak slowly, think deeply, and listen fully. People who ask, but what's the truth here? Instead of what's the trend? And perhaps most importantly, people whose presence calms your nervous system instead of inflaming it. Let's be honest. Most of us tolerate relationships that confuse us, drain us, or distract us. Because we're afraid. Afraid of disappointing. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of seeming arrogant. But what's the cost? Confusion. Insecurity. Self-minus doubt. Inner noise. You don't just lose time in toxic environments. You lose direction. You lose the thread of your own thinking. Because no matter how strong you are, your environment trains you. Every single day. Let me tell you about Cam. Cam is a strategist, clear thinker, high performer. But every time he hung out with a certain friend group, he felt off. They joked about failure, gossiped, mocked his ideas, made cynicism look cool. He didn't realize it at first. But one day, after leaving a dinner, he heard his own thoughts. Maybe I'm too idealistic. Maybe discipline is a waste of time. He paused. And that pause changed everything. Because he realized those weren't his thoughts. They were absorbed. He lost weak. He was unaware. So he made a quiet shift. He didn't cut people off dramatically. He simply spent more time with people who made him feel more intelligent, more focused, more himself. And his thinking got sharper. His decisions cleaner. His spirit lighter. The Stoics knew this truth. You are not an islander. You are a mirror of your surroundings. Seneca said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is a mutual one. People learn as they teach. In modern terms, surround yourself with those who elevate your thinking. Because intelligence isn't just what you know. It's what you absorb. And your environment speaks to you even in silence. Here's your practice. Draw the columns. In one, write who makes me more clear. In the other, who makes me more confused. Ask yourself, who respects my silence? Who challenges my ideas with care, not contempt? Who remembers my values, even when I forget them? Who listens without rushing to respond? Then shift your proximity. You don't need to burn bridges. You need to build boundaries. Spend more time around those who remind you of the person you're becoming. Less time with those who drag you back into your old loops. That's not elitism. That's emotional hygiene. And what about solitude? Here's the twist. Sometimes the most important company you can keep is your own. If your mind is always filled with others' noise, you never hear your own wisdom. That's why the Stoics practiced intentional solitude. Not isolation, but space, stillness, reflection. Marcus Aurelius called it retreating into yourself. He wrote, nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. So protect that space. Make time each week to be alone. Not to scroll, but to sit with your own voice. Ask it, what do I believe? What am I pretending not to know? What kind of presence am I cultivating? That's not loneliness. That's leadership. Let's make it real. This week, do 3 things. Audit your inputs. Unfollow noise. Mute what distracts. Seek signal. Upgrade one conversation. Text someone who makes you feel more focused. Invite them to coffee. Ask real questions. Talk about ideas, not people. Schedule solitude. 30 minutes. No phone. Just pen and paper. Ask, what truth have I been avoiding? These 3 shifts will multiply your mental clarity faster than any book. Because you're not just thinking better. You're breathing better. You're surrounded by oxygen, not smoke. Remember, the environment you allow is the future you allow. Choose your company with care. Choose your inputs with intention. Choose your solitude with reverence. Because the mind, like a flame, needs protection from the wind. And if you guard it well, your intelligence won't just survive this noisy world. It will shine. Stillness over noise, the final discipline of inner intelligence. In the final measure, what defines an intelligent life? Not how many books you've read. Not how fast you think. Not how often you win debates. But this: how still is your mind when life gets loud? Because in a world that rewards noise, stillness is rebellion. In a world that trades truth for speed, stillness is clarity. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, stillness is how you listen to yourself. And the Stoics? They mastered this art, not through retreat, but through practice. They knew that a still mind is not passive. It's powerful, not empty, but undisturbed. Marcus Aurelius ruled during plague, war, betrayal. And yet he returned to silence every day. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That line wasn't metaphorical. It was tactical. Stillness was his daily weapon. Because he understood. When your mind is still, you don't react, you respond. You don't chase, you choose. You don't fear, you focus. But let's be honest, stillness is not easy. It takes strength to pause, to not reply instantly, to sit in discomfort without distraction. Because silence reveals what noise hides. The fear you haven't faced. The insecurity behind your overthinking. The truth you keep dodging with bismuisms. That's why most people avoid stillness. Not because they're too busy, but because they're afraid of what they'll find when the noise stops. But the Stoics chose stillness daily. They didn't wait for peace. They practiced it. Seneca said, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be." Stillness was how they found that contentment. Not in circumstances, but in self minus command. Let me tell you about Jules. Jules was a strategist, sharp thinker, quick decision minus maker, but always on edge. One night during a retreat, he lost signal, no phone, no Wi-Fi. He panicked. He realized he hadn't sat in silence for years. The first hour was agony. Then he began to hear things. Not voices, but his own thoughts clearly. His own body settling. His own truth emerging. He wrote later, "I was addicted to productivity. I was addicted to avoiding myself." Since then, Jules practices 10 minutes of daily stillness. Not because it makes him better, but because it makes him real. So how do you reclaim stillness in a chaotic world? Start with this. Stillness is a skill, not a mood. And like all skills, it grows with practice. Here are 3 daily rituals to develop it. The morning, sit 5-10 min. Before the world speaks, sit. No phone. No goals. Just be. Let thoughts rise and fall like waves. No micro, minus pause. 1 breath before answering. 1 pause before posting. 1 heartbeat of silence before choosing. Stillness isn't always long. It's present. The evening we're set 5 min. No screens. No stimulation. Write 1 line, what did I learn today about myself? Let the day settle like dust on water. These aren't hacks. They're rituals of return. To your breath. To your body. To your truth. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the presence of awareness. It's how you become the observer, not the reactor. The conductor, not the noise. And when you live from that place, you stop needing to prove. You stop needing to chase. You stop mistaking activity for purpose. You become aligned. Let's bring it home. You've spent 12 lessons not just learning ideas, but returning to yourself. You've trained your attention. You've practiced reflection. You've aligned thought with action. You've chosen depth over speed. You've protected your peace. And now you've reclaimed your stillness. This is not the end. This is a reset. A remembering of who you are beneath the noise. So tomorrow morning when the world pulls at you again, don't reach for your phone. Reach for stillness. And whisper, I am here. I am aware. I begin with peace. Then move forward, not rushed. Not scattered, but anchored. Because now you don't just think more intelligently. You live more intelligently. Silently. Steadily. Stoically.